Instagram DM. Dear Igor, I am in my final year of high school and I am hesitant towards the idea of going to college. I don't want to. I want to become a personal trainer and then become an online social media influencer or a YouTuber like yourself. Do you have any advice? No! Alright guys, so today I want to do, this is very different from the usual status quo when it comes to my channel, when it comes to talking about nutrition, fitness, training, all that stuff. Today, I've done this a few times in the past and the response usually has been fairly positive, so I want to go completely off topic and I want to talk about something which in some ways is even more important. You can train, you can get muscle, you can get a six-pack, you can look good, you can get, yourself a 300, 400-pound bench press. That stuff is all great, but at the end of the day, let's be honest, it comes second to something which is a lot more important, essentially your career, and let's be honest, financial success. We're talking about money. The reason why I'm making this video is because I have seen my demographics on this YouTube channel, and a lot of you guys are relatively young. So this video is definitely going to be targeted towards individuals who are, somewhere between, like late high school to, like into your, maybe your early 30s or something like that. Pretty much when you are at a point in your life when you are getting, you're figuring your crap out, you are getting your shit together. This is a very important time in your life, and let's be honest, your financial success is going to have a direct impact on your success in everything else in life. So you need to figure this stuff out. Now, you guys may be wondering, okay, well, who the hell are you guys? Why are we listening to you? What makes you an expert on this? And the answer to that is, yeah, obviously, but welcome to YouTube. That's pretty much everyone else. We're all just talking about stuff, and if you choose to listen to us, great, and if not, well... But seriously though, I did actually work as a financial analyst for about 3 years prior to me getting into YouTube and fitness and crossing over into that. So, I have a reasonable amount of experience. I was, working at a company where I was, in charge of managing credit risk for multi-million-dollar portfolios. This isn't like me bragging and being like, hey, I'm so awesome. This is just me saying I'm not a complete idiot. So I know a few things, and if you guys want to take my advice, great. If not, that's completely okay too. And at the same time, I was also able to start my own business, which hasn't fallen apart in its first year. And although a lot of people may think like, well, that's so basic, isn't that a given? Not necessarily, because statistically speaking, 80% of businesses, yeah, they don't get that luxury. But the biggest reason I'm making this video is because on here, on social media, and fitness and non-fitness, everybody, it's so common to sell you this lifestyle. We've all seen it, there's like photos or videos of a guy standing in front of like a really cool car. It's like a Mercedes or a BMW or an Audi or something. And he's kind of just, the caption says like, shoot for the stars, go for your dreams, do all this stuff. Like, I used to be so-and-so in this and this a year ago, and now I'm here and you can do it too. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have, I think that is important. If you want to be, successful at the end of the day, I really feel that the two most important things you need is number one, motivation, which is satisfied by this. If you see videos or photos like this and it motivates you to get off your ass and do whatever it is that you want to do or you want to excel at, then good. That's why there's nothing wrong with this. However, that satisfies like 1% of the problem, 1% of the equation, because the other 99%, how you can get from point A to point B. You're a young guy, you just graduated high school or college or university or whatever, and you want to get to a point where 5 years down the road, you are financially stable, you are financially successful, you don't live at home anymore, you don't have any student debt. What are smart financial decisions you can make to get there and maybe even shoot higher than that? The problem is on social media, they're not really going to talk about that because it's a lot, it's a lot cooler and sexier to take a photo in front of a cool car and, give very ambiguous, generic, advice from a motivational standpoint. How to actually sit there and be like, all right, what you're going to do is you're going to make smart investment decisions in your early 20s. That's not really as sexy, but the thing is, that's a lot more important in my opinion. So that is what we're going to talk about in this video. Number one, entrepreneurship and business. This is a fantastic thing, and this is one of the biggest things that is kind of sold to you guys here on social media, because a lot of YouTubers, a lot of Instagrammer, a lot of these people, they essentially, they do this themselves. They are essentially small self-run businesses, and they really sell that entrepreneurial lifestyle, because if it turns out well, then that's when essentially your level of income is unlimited. I mean, if you're a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, you can earn a lot of money usually, but sometimes it's kind of capped off, right? There's usually like an average salary, and everyone kind of falls between this range. As a business owner, you can, it's limitless. You can, go bankrupt in your first year, and you can absolutely suck, and you can barely afford to pay rent, or you could, you become the next Steve Jobs. The range is limitless, so obviously it is very easy to sell this and, make this look very cool, because it could be cool, but it could also be extremely, I was gonna say non-fruitful. That's not a word. Screw it, we're gonna roll with it. So many times I see people, again, they're like romanticizing this idea, this notion of being a business owner. I've talked to so many people who like, they'll be like 20 years old, and then they're in college or something, and I'm like, oh, what are you taking? And they're like, I'm in second year business, and when I graduate, I want to start a business. And I'm thinking like, that's not how it works. Usually the people who end up starting businesses are the ones who are able to develop a product or do a skill or a service, which they probably learned somewhere else, whether this be in school or not. A lot of the times the people that are in general business in college or something, they may not actually have any idea. You just sitting there and saying like, I want to be a business owner, or I want to be an entrepreneur. That's bullshit. What product are you going to make? What service are you going to do? And if you have figured that out, what are you going to do better than the rival, better than the already established businesses and competition out there? Because you're someone new entering, the odds are stacked against you. You got to do, you got to make a product which is better than everybody else. Or you got to make a similar product but at a better price than everyone else. You got to do it better, faster, cheaper. You need to do something, and you have to understand that going in, because a lot of people, they don't get that. A lot of times the people that go to like general business for college or university, whatever, they're going to end up working as like analysts or accountants for people who started companies after they graduated from something like computer science or something, because they developed like an actual app, and they have a business based around an actual usable product or service which people out there need, because you have an idea. So a great example of this, and actually the sponsor of today's video, is Movement Watches. So Movement Watches, it was started by these two, I think it was college dropouts. They had this amazing idea, and they thought that, we are going to come into this industry, which is now has kind of become redundant and obsolete. Watch companies used to like manufacture the watches, and then they would go through a middleman, a retailer, who would jack up the price because they have a certain margin which they themselves have to cover, and then they would sell it at a higher cost to the consumer. So these two guys from Movement, they took a big risk dropping out of college, but it worked, and in doing so, they were able to make a pretty damn successful company. I think they've sold like a 1.5 million watches over the course of like 4 years since the company's inception, which is pretty ridiculous, because they essentially came up with the idea of cutting out this middleman who just jacks up the price. There's no point. Why don't you sell directly from manufacturer to the consumer? You are able to sell a similar quality product as the competition, but at a much lower price. So in this case, yes, dropping out of school was a big risk, but they actually had a plan and they had a way to execute it. So in that case, it's worth it. All these other people who just say like, I'm going to start a business, and they have absolutely no idea what they're going to do, that's bullshit. That's like saying, I'm going to go to the NFL. And have you ever played football? Like, no, but can't be that hard to figure out. So yeah, guys, before I keep going, big thank you to Movement for sponsoring this video. This is actually my favorite. This is the Sterling 42mm from their Voyager series. If you guys are interested, I'm gonna leave a link down in the description box below, and that'll actually get you 15 bucks off any Movement watch. So if you're interested, check that out. So the three big things I wanna mention when it comes to specifically starting a business is, number one, you better have a goddamn good idea. Number two, even if you do have a good idea and you want to go for it, great. Do this on the side, because I see so many people, they think that like, that's it. I'm 18, I got this idea, I have to quit my job, I don't need college, I don't need to do anything, I'm just going to go after this completely. And I think to myself, why? You don't need to do that. You need a backup plan. You need a plan B, because if this doesn't work out, or if this fails, again, 80% of businesses fail within their first year, statistically speaking, you need some way to be able to afford, like food and stuff. You have 24 hours in a day. You sleep, maybe 6 or 7 hours. You go to work, or school or whatever for about 8 to 9 hours, because you need that contingency plan. You need plan B. And then you have the rest of the day, you got your 7 or 8 hours, or maybe you take like 1 hour, you put that aside to go to the gym. The rest of the time is plenty of time to work and bust your ass and grind. And if you got a hobby and you want to turn that into like a lifestyle, you want to turn that into a business, into a career, you can do that, but you don't need all 15 hours. It's not like, that's it, I'm quitting my job because, I want to sell t-shirts on Instagram. And the third thing, guys, is be prepared for this to fail, because a lot of them do, and you need that contingency plan. So that kid in the beginning who told me that he wants to just, jump into I want to be a YouTuber or something, that's literally like telling me you want to go to the NBA. So to this kid, I wanted to say, that's fine that you have an aspiration to do this, but do this on the side, and you need a contingency plan. Because if this doesn't work out, and statistically speaking, it probably won't, what are you going to do? Me, I don't think my business, fortunately, is going to fall apart. It's been going fairly well for a good while, and it's only growing. But if it did, God forbid, I would be okay, because I have a decent contingency plan in terms of an education, in terms of actual practical real-world job experience. So that's it, guys. You better have a damn good idea. In the beginning, do this on the side too, your normal life, and also be prepared for it to fail. God forbid, because sometimes it does. Actually, oftentimes it does. Alright guys, now that we got that out of the way, let's jump into some more realistic, simple personal finance ratios, which I find are really helpful in order to live a good, responsible lifestyle. Number one is you want to spend, I would say, at most 40% of your annual income on actual housing, post-tax. This means, like your mortgage or your rent. You take that annual income, you multiply by 0.4, and on an annual yearly basis, that is the most that I would recommend spending on housing. If you want to be even more conservative, I would take this down to 35 or even 30%. Me, when I actually graduated from school and I moved out and I got my first apartment, I don't know if you guys remember, if you're watching my channel, that long, it wasn't that nice of a place, but I didn't care. I was 24 years old. I'm just some young guy. I just came out of school. I didn't really care. But the good thing about that is that it was only 29% of my annual income. Only 29% of every one of my paychecks actually went towards rent, meaning I had a lot of income left over for things like paying back my student loan, savings, and just general disposable income. This is a very financially responsible way to live. People in Toronto, Vancouver, or in the States in New York, Los Angeles, California, these cities with their ridiculously inflated housing costs, when they're living way beyond their means, 50 or even 60% of their paycheck goes towards housing. I don't know how you survive. At that point, you have so little left for actual things like savings or paying back, things like student debt. Having just disposable income for everyday things, that is a really crappy way to live. My personal recommendation is that you don't spend more than 20 to 25% of your annual income on the car. This isn't how much you spend per year, like in the case of a lease or a finance. This means what is the actual purchase price of the car? So if you earn 100 grand, this would be buying a car for about 25 grand at most, which means congratulations, you can get yourself a nice, brand new Toyota Camry or a gently used Lexus or a BMW or something. When I see people who earn let's say 60 grand a year, just a little bit above the average in Canada or the United States, and they're driving around in a $50,000 purchase price, a BMW, like a 4 Series or something, I'm thinking, what the fuck are you doing? Honestly. At this point, it's kind of how people say frontin', you want to put up this front of you being a lot more luxurious and rich than you actually are. That's not a good idea. You know what's a good way of looking rich? Actually being rich, or actually being whatever financial level that you want to be at. If you live outside your means by spending 65% on some condo that you can't afford, or by buying a car with essentially an entire year's worth of annual salary, that is not financially responsible. Last thing I want to mention when it comes to cars is always buy used, even if it's just a few years. I've worked in the financial car industry actually before. In fact, my internship when I was in third year of university, I'm not going to say which company I worked at because I don't know if I'm allowed to say so, but it was either Audi, Mercedes, or BMW. I'm gonna leave that as a little ambiguous. So it was one of those three. So I learned that depending on the car manufacturer and the model, there are some cars out there where their residual value, this is what we call the value of the car as a percentage when it comes back from a lease. So when you lease a car for let's say 3 years, at the end of the lease, you get the option to buy that car. The residual value for some of these cars is literally down to 1/3. That means over the course of 3 years, that car lost 66% of its original value. That's ridiculous. That's why I always advocate, look, even if you want to be the nice guy, let's say you have a good, sustainable, nice income, and you want to treat yourself, you want to buy yourself a BMW or a more luxurious car, you don't need the 2018 model. Go get yourself a nice 2016, 2015 model. You can get it gently used with 30,000 miles tops. It's gonna run fine, it's gonna perform well, and it's gonna cost you a lot less. Number 4, in terms of savings, I advocate saving about at least 20% on a monthly basis. Every paycheck that you get should go into, if you're in Canada, it should go into some form of savings, like tax-free savings account, or in the States, I think you guys have something called like a 401k, or if you own a home, it should go and pay down your mortgage. Pretty much you're putting into home equity. However, that's only if you are making a good level of income, let's say something around the average or higher. If you are not fortunate enough to do so, or maybe you're younger, that's fine. In your case, just focus on accumulating as little debt as possible, and whatever money you do have lying around, whether it be like 15, 10, whatever percent, put that into some level of savings. Number 5, no fucking credit card debt. I really believe that the credit card industry was generated and is only profitable to this day because it preys on and takes advantage of financially uneducated individuals. In my opinion, guys, if you want to buy something and if you can't afford it in cash, like literally with your debit card, don't buy it at all. The only reason that I even own a credit card, in addition to obviously building up a decent credit score, is you want to do free transactions. With my debit card, I only get like 10 transactions a month, and after that they start charging me like $1 per transaction. I'm like, okay, screw you, I'm just gonna use a credit card because the transactions are free. I can do like 1 million, and at the end of the month I can just pay back that balance via my checking account, and that's it. Easy. I literally think that every single month you should be paying back your credit card bill in full. If you can't, don't buy shit. In my opinion, the only long-term, that is month-over-month debt that you should be having is student loans, a mortgage, essentially housing payments, and maybe a car if you are financing one, that is. If you don't have the money in your account, do not take out debt and use a credit card to buy a PlayStation 4, Yeezys, iPhone 10s, none of that crap. If you can't afford it in cash, don't buy it. Because if you start missing payments here or there, number 1, your credit score is going to go to crap, and also you're going to be paying ridiculous interest. Guys, people don't really understand how bad the interest is. It's about 10 times higher than that of a decent mortgage rate you can get on a house, and about 6 or 7 times higher than that which you would get if you went to a bank and just got a regular loan, like a line of credit. Okay, so related to that is number 6, watch your credit score. When you're 30, you want to buy a house, you want to finance a car, that is when it comes back to bite you in the ass. So to actually illustrate how bad this is, let's give you guys an example. Let's say you want to buy a house for, $500,000, $500,000 house, and you scrape together $100,000 and you were able to put down a 20% down payment. Great. You still need a loan on the other $400,000, so you get a mortgage. Let's say the bank gives you a 2% mortgage rate, which is pretty damn low. At least we're using this example because you have a very good credit score. Nice, good job. This is going to come out to about $108,000 in total interest over the course of your life as you are paying that house back. But let's say you have a bad credit score. Let's say they give you a 4% mortgage rate, which is effectively double. It's only 2%. You think it's not a big deal. It's not a bad deal. Yeah, it is, because over the course of the period when you were paying back your house, it's going to come out to $231,000 in interest. So literally, when you were a kid, because you screwed around, you missed a few payments on your cell phone bill, you missed a few payments on your credit card bill, your credit score dropped down from the 700s to the 600s, or maybe the low 600s. Congratulations, because you were too cheap or you couldn't afford and you couldn't pay like $80 here or there a few times, or you missed a few payments. You've effectively now charged yourself an additional $100,000 over the course of your life through these additional mortgage payments because you were fiscally stupid when you were a kid. So again, guys, watch your credit score. Don't mess this up. There's a lot of free credit score monitoring websites out there like Credit Karma or Borrow Well, where you can just type in your information, give them your email, and they actually give you your credit score for free. And you can check this on a monthly basis to see if it's going up or down. It's a really good resource. I highly recommend it. Number 7 is live at home as long as you possibly can, as long as your parents will let you, and as long as it's essentially not critically embarrassing. In my case, I actually lived at home with my parents until I was like 23, maybe like almost 24. About a year after I graduated from school, I worked at my job, my first job out of school, and I lived at home. I did the whole commute thing to work. Because of that, I was able to graduate with 0 student debt and a decent amount of savings. I had like 20K saved up in the bank, which for a guy at the age of 23 is pretty damn good. I actually have a friend who did something even further. He literally lived at home until he was like 25, which, a lot of people are going to be like, that's a bit weird, that's a bit embarrassing. And yeah, perhaps. But when he actually moved out, he didn't rent a place, he didn't move in with roommates, he was able to buy his first condo. So the guy's 25 years old, he owns a 2-bedroom condo in downtown Toronto, which is something which a lot of people won't be able to actually say until they're like 35. So, the longer you live at home, the more that you are able to be frugal with your spending and actually able to invest in long-term, savings or assets. That is so much better. So that's pretty damn good in his situation because he effectively has never had to rent a place. And renting has pros and cons, but let's be honest, renting is pretty much a sunk cost. You're not actually putting any money into like buying a house, like paying down the principal in your mortgage and actually owning like a house, an asset. You're just essentially just throwing money, towards your landlord. Number 8, this one it's really, it makes sense because we just had a Black Friday, which is like the ultimate holiday for consumerism. So this notion that we all have to keep on buying shit. Just the people who line up to get the brand new iPhone and they sit outside like the Apple store in New York and they're like intense and they're sitting there like in the blistering cold for 24 hours because you have the iPhone 7 Plus, but you gotta get that iPhone 10. What the hell are you doing, honestly? If you can afford that easily with disposable income, great. Godspeed, go enjoy it. But I think so many people out there in our society right now, and I see this a lot on social media too, a lot of people, I call this their stuff broke. So they have a lot of stuff, but they're essentially broke. They've got like the $700 Yeezys. They've got the new Apple Watch. They've got the new iPhone X, which just came out. They've got this and that, and all this other crap. But then they have like $300 of cash. They got like $2,000 in credit card bills. They have $10,000 in student payments, and their net worth is essentially negative. What are you doing? You don't need this crap. It's not pertinent to your situation. This is something that you don't really need. This is kind of stuff that you want. And we can all want stuff, but I think that it's become ridiculous. Like in our consumeristic society, it's getting nuts. We see people on social media driving the fancy cars and, wearing the $800 shoes who are designed by some nutcase.
You ain't got the answers, man.
And then they're like, I gotta have that. If you can afford it, great. If you can't, don't buy that shit. Stop trying to look cool and rich on Instagram in front of your friends. You're not fooling anyone, and in the long term, it's a stupid fucking decision. All right, next up, let's talk about investments. Because a lot of people say like, invest and be smart with your money, but a lot of people don't really know what that actually means. So here are some good examples. I've got a couple written down here. Number 1, the best possible thing to invest in my opinion, invest in yourself. What I mean by that is, if you are at a job or you're in school, whatever, invest in education, invest in skills, invest in, if you're at work, invest in additional certifications, invest in something which is going to make you better at what it is that you want to do, because that is going to allow you to demand a higher salary, that is going to allow you to be qualified for more promotions, that's going to allow you to transfer into a better position at a new company which pays more, because it's making you more attractive to the organization that you work for. A couple other good investment things would be something like, look, if you want to get into stocks, I don't really recommend getting into stocks, and I'll mention that in a minute. I recommend doing something like getting into index funds. If you guys don't know what that is, look it up because it's kind of cool. Index funds are like, instead of you actually purchasing individual stocks or securities and thinking that you can beat the system because I'm going to buy 2 shares of Tesla, 1 share of Microsoft, 1 share of Apple. No, this allows you to essentially invest in a portfolio which is already massive and diversified. This would be like investing in something you can literally invest in something like the S&P 500. I know a lot of you guys have heard about that, but you don't know what that is. Essentially, it's a grouping of like a lot of companies, and if those companies rise and fall together, that index fund is going to rise and fall. And this is good because everyone's always heard of diversification. Well, this is a great example of that. Why invest in one company when you can invest in? It's almost like investing in the stock market. And if you think, is this a good or safe option? I'm going to throw the S&P 500 long-term on the screen right now. And as you can tell, long-term, it's been a pretty damn good investment strategy. Other than 2008 when the whole world went to shit, long-term, it's been pretty good. And the final thing that you can invest in would be property, actually buying houses. There's 2 reasons for this. Number 1 is you can actually invest, you can buy a house for yourself, you can live in it, and then while you're living in it, the house, usually real estate, again, except for 2008, usually real estate values, climb. So you buy a house for $1 million, 10 years later, it's worth $1.5 million. Congratulations. Your asset appreciated 50%. You are technically, every homeowner is actually also technically kind of an investor. Another option, instead of, buying a house for yourself, would be to buy a house and then rent that out. Turn that house into a rental property. This is good because number 1, you're going to earn rental income, which you can then use to pay down the mortgage. And number 2 is because, again, the house, you may not be living in it, but you do own it, and the house is appreciating in value over time. At least it should, hopefully. Okay, now let's talk about bad investments. These are things which I think are either risky or they're just not really worth your time, your money. They're not very lucrative. Number one would be trying to play the stock market, especially on a short term, and thinking you can be like a day trader. It's not gonna work, guys. You don't have the technical know-how, the technical experience. If you did, you would be working at like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan. If you don't, if you're sitting at home and you're investing your your $2,000 little portfolio, that's a very easy way. If you don't know what you're doing, to mess things up. I think it's almost become cool now to be like that 23-year-old kid who says, I'm gonna play the stock market. It makes you seem cool. It's like, oh man, am I Gordon Gekko or am I, Jordan Belfort? I'm playing the stock market. It's cool and all to say that, but when your, portfolio is down 20% because you don't know what the fuck you're doing, suddenly it's not so cool. Another thing, which I don't want to say it's a bad investment, but I think it's not very lucrative, and if you want to do this as a safe place to store your money, it's not a bad idea. But when it comes to really low interest accounts, for example, getting like a GIC, which is worth 1%, 1.5% annual return, it's not really worth it. You can invest like 10 grand, and at the end of it, after a year, you get $160 back. What's the point of that? Right now, investing, current interest rates are so low. It's not like what it was 10, 20, 30 years ago when interest rates were a bit higher. You can actually get a decent rate of return. Right now, it's almost useless. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's not a bad thing to do to be, smart and safe with your money. But at the same time, if you think that you're going to earn a good income level, if you think you're going to live off your investments, it's not going to happen with such low interest rates. Number 11 is everybody's favorite, really simple cliche business advice: diversify. So diversification is something which I think I've heard a lot of people saying, but the problem is it's almost useless unless you actually have tangible understanding of how you can diversify. The problem is it's very easy to say that when you're in our weird YouTube industry, because a lot of people, they can have like merchandise deals, they can have sponsors, they can have YouTube income, they can have services they do, like in my case, things like online coaching or selling programs. So yeah, it's very easy to diversify. But if you're not in the social media world, like the other 99.99% of the population who work more standardized corporate 9-to-5 jobs, what the hell does diversification mean? So in this case, I think a really good example would be, let's say you have your job. Again, you have, the rest of the time when you're not at work or sleeping, you can work on a side business. I literally know girls who make really respectable incomes making their jewelry at home and then selling it on Etsy or something. It's kind of random, but there is a big demand for that. I know another guy who works at a bank, Monday to Friday, but on the weekends or in his spare time in the evenings, he does a little bit of freelance web design for other individuals or smaller companies. And another really good way to get additional streams of income, which I already mentioned earlier, is simply rental properties. I know of people who would save up money, from 3, 4, 5 years working in their job. Instead of going out and pissing it on random shit they don't need, they would save up that money. They would be able to buy another house, maybe have an additional down payment, rent out that house, and there you go. Someone's paying off your house. It's an additional stream of income via the form of rental property income. And I know of people who've literally done this, and they would, over time, by the time they're 40, they would own 5, 6, 7 houses, and they would buy up big houses around college campuses, and they would rent it out to 30 or 40 students. And it's insane how much money these people are making. Essentially, it gets to the point where they could quit their job and retire at the age of 40, and from then on, all they do is just sit back and watch these tenants pay off their mortgages on their multiple houses, and then eventually over time they have a massive retirement portfolio of 5 houses which they could sell off for $5 million. And the last thing I want to talk about, this one is weird because we spent the entire time talking about how you can make financially responsible decisions to, ensure that you are in the middle class or potentially even higher than the middle class. Maybe you want to start a business, doing all these things, get ahead a little bit in life and make smart financial decisions. But now we are taking it down to the bare minimum, because before you can be, financially well off, you have to be financially basic and stable, and that means don't go broke. It's that simple. And statistically speaking, I'm not pulling this out of my ass. There was actually a report done by the Brookings Institute. This is an American-based think tank, a research group, and they found that statistically speaking, if you do these 3 things, you have a 98% chance of not being below the poverty line, and you have a 76% chance of being in the American middle class, essentially the American dream. So those 3 things are: number 1, graduate high school. That's it. Not even college or university. You don't have to do anything fancy. Just graduate high school. Number 2, this report said, don't have kids until you are married. However, I don't really think that applies here. Maybe it did, 20, 30 years ago. But now, marriage really isn't an option for a lot of more new age couples who are they just think, I don't really need marriage because I don't need the government involved in my personal life, my personal relationship. So what I interpret this rule as is don't have kids until you're ready, both in terms of life experience and in terms of income level and job stability. So if you and your partner are both like 25, 26, you know what you're doing in life, you have good average income levels and good job security, good job sustainability, then good, congratulations, you want to start a family, good for you, Godspeed, I wish you luck. However, if you are 18 and you work a minimum wage job and your partner is also 18 and he or she doesn't even have a job or doesn't even have a high school diploma, in your case, that was probably not the best time to be looking to starting a family. Just this isn't even my opinion. This is from the statistics, so yeah. And the third thing is simply get a job. And that's it, guys. It's not like get a job that earns X income or requires X credentials or qualification. Just have a job. So really, guys, that is it. If you were watching this video and you're a young guy, you're 16, 17, 18, 19, and you think, Igor, I want to ensure that I make smart financial decisions, that's great. But step 1 is to, before you can make smart financial decisions, is to not make dumb financial decisions. Graduate high school, don't get anybody knocked up until you're ready to do so, and get a job. And then after you do those 3 things, you can look into other things like, post-secondary education or getting better jobs or investing or all these things. So guys, that is it. That is the end of the video. Thank you for watching if you made it this far, because as always, this video probably went very long, although that's not very surprising because welcome to my channel. If you guys like this video, definitely let me know. Leave it a like, leave me a comment down below. I really want to know what you guys think when I do videos like this, which are not, normal when it comes to just talking about fitness or nutrition or training. When I go a little outside of my normal boundaries and try something new, let me know what you guys thought. But besides that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you as always, and I'll see you in the next video.